Hello everyone and welcome to round number 2 of our 8th Newcomers tournament. This time we have Rip Blip 23 again, Iced Wind 13, Matt Scar, and 2 Kawaii to die. This map we have a lot of green prices. And a power
Joining me
colony.
today is DT. Thank you. That's like a nice scientific spot northwest. Southeast is the spots, I guess. Electronic starts double again, so you don't really want to found no math, I guess, but silicon is high, so you can make it work.
Right,
After that, you can go into food.
there's a nice spot for Nomad all the way northeast. The scientific spot you mentioned is probably the standout found. I'm worried about the spot in southeast just because there's nothing else near there besides your iron and aluminum. But
I think it could work if you go robotic and electronics level 2, I guess. But people decide to found somewhere else. Rip the Blip founding Nomad, still has to found his second HQ, which is fine. Icewind's going for standard expensive southeast, which is also fine. The Scar's doing some tricky stuff, but I understand why you would do that.
it's okay, but you'd still rather skip aluminum on HQ1 as the robot. Collect that extra iron. Iron is even worth more at this point, so there's no reason to go for that immediately, but it makes very little difference. This geotherm, though, is going to slow him down a ton, and not really going to do all that much. Although it is a power colony, maybe it will pay off if everyone else is slow into power. Yeah, Icewind and 2 Kawaii to die. I'm not really sure what they're looking for with their founds.
Yes, a nice shield next to him. Maybe I can use superconductor with that.
Maybe. With Blip, I do like his founds. Generally, great access to silicon, good access to aluminum, access to carbon, which will be important if he wants to produce the electronics. What I do not like about his found is he ended up crushing the medium water that was right near his silicon base. And since he's not founded adjacent to any other water, it would have been nice for him to hold on to that.
Maybe he's playing to go for high water later in this game, but
yeah, it's definitely
minor.
It's a possibility, but it still worries me. Like, I think if you're going to play for the high water, I think you found an HQ by that. So there is definitely room for that, and you're going to be shipping a lot more of that than the carbon, so I don't know.
People should go into buy claims from the black market. I don't see anyone doing that. They trying to buy goons.
Yeah, Scar and Icewind buying goons for the geos does make sense, especially with the power colony. These are going to be very important tiles to protect. I'm kind of okay with them doing that over the claim, but they're going to want to make a real strong effort to capitalize on power money if they're going to be skipping the long-term advantage in those cheap claims. Although everyone's skipping them, so maybe it's fine.
A lot of players are going into power, which is interesting, which makes sense. There's a power colony, you want to go into power early if there's a power colony. So that's good to see.
Yeah, I don't really understand Blip going for the single wind turbine so far away, though. I mean, you're the Nomad. You have very easy access to silicon, even though solar panels are more difficult to work with in a lot of ways. It's just so much more natural. It doesn't hamper you in the same ways. And it also, even if you're going to go wind, he has cliffs near him that are slightly weaker, but won't hurt him as much long term.
The Scar wins the auction and decides to go for a metal mine, so then he has double aluminum. I disagree with that. I'd rather see like a solar panel on it.
Right. As a robot especially, there's no great reason to look for aluminum a second, especially on a map where everyone's collecting aluminum and there's plenty of aluminum. And for that Scar in particular, he was looking to some extent to make power money. So paying that 10k of debt, well, it's really costing him cash at this point, and also it's not helpful for his strategy.
Icewind's just upgraded to HK level 3 and still has 3 claims. Is trying for is going for extra water. I think that's overkill 3 water. Rather see 3 farms.
It is good that he is moving into 2 farms at least. That will be helpful, but exactly, with just the 2 water, he would have had enough water to sustain 3 farms. And water is just not worth enough for this move, especially since no one else is going to be driving up the price of water. The Quiet Die picking up 2 water claims as well. Nice big surplus of water there. Really would also like to see a 3rd farm there. Does have that extra claim. Instead going for a single glass kiln. Glass,
not what you want to do.
I mean, glass is a good market, but not as good as food. And it's also not a market you can sustain. You don't have silicon and you don't have adjacency.
You can buy a claim, but it's designed to buy a gun. If he bought a claim, he could have done like 2 glasses, but he decides to buy a gun and plant it on the geo, which is also understandable because power is high, of course.
Right. But even if he were to buy a claim, I still would rather see a 3rd farm than a 2nd glass. And I still would not want to see that glass in the first place. Speaking of single buildings, Blip also has the single electronics factory. Please don't do this. I mean, it's just not going to make very much money, ever.
It's not even making money.
It's making $28, that's something.
Okay, I have my power if you want.
But yeah, compared to pretty much anything else he could be making, it's just not where it needs to be.
The splashy dome auction is going to be really nice. That scar is robotic, but he doesn't have any depth in the Icewind and with Blip are in A rating, so they can also fight for this. I don't think Kawaii wants to have this. Maybe if he can get it for 18, but 20 is already too much.
Yeah. It is probably a bit disappointing to that Scar that he's gonna stop making power money at this point for a while, but it's a solid, very, very solid pleasure dome at $206 a second. Unfortunately, the auction decided to give a pretty weak pleasure dome tile instead of a much stronger one tile to the left, but not much you can do about that. Take what you can get.
Why is selling that Scar's Geo? It's understandable because power is still high. Is he making, how much power is he making from that? Almost 400. So he's nicely paying his steps.
Let's get our science on.
Yeah, what really feels like is going on here, everyone went into 1 Geo, 2 Geos. No one really made a move to really make a lot of money on power. So that's been leaving the power price slowly rising. And honestly, it really feels like a missed opportunity for Blip here. Because this is one of the great strengths of a Nomad or a Scavenger. Being able to move into all those solar panels or turbines.
He could have been making power money by now.
He probably could be HQ5 by now. But it's okay. Icewind.
Ooh.
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 This is
You know, that Scott does that too against me when I have a play against him in the ranks. I think he's delaying himself by doing that. Icewind can defend himself.
Right. I mean, it makes a little bit of sense in just because Icewind is going to have the long-term advantage and he's also pushing for these patents. But that Scar is just not making enough money to pull this off.
And as the other 2 players, she didn't really want to help that Scar because if the maturity bias goes through, then that Scar has like 3, maybe even 4 stocks to that person, and that's just going to snowball him.
I mean, maybe. Probably. I guess the big thing is that Scar does have this really nice pleasure dome pushing him along. Otherwise, with his power being taken away, with all this debt, he's slowing down a bit. Oh, not that much, I guess, because he's also the robot, doesn't pay the life support costs. And when life support is this high, that ends up being a pretty big deal.
nice claim going on. I also want to like look at the patterns, like Icewind got carbon scrubbing, which I would say yes, go for it, but you already have like a carbon claim, so I would just like go for something else, because you already committed with that claim onto carbon. You cannot really change that into something else.
Right, definitely doesn't make a lot of sense for carbon scrubbing to be the first priority. Something more like a teleportation, or especially a slant drilling to help with his weak water, would have been really nice to see.
I want to see a superconductor, and I want to see the silicon price go up, because
yes, superconductor solar panels would be great. And Blip went into a second wind turbine. That's a step in the right direction. But again, he's been selling a lot of silicon all game, which has been really making things easier for his opponents by making glass very profitable. He could have been making glass himself instead of these electronics. He could have had a lot of solar panels down. He could be in a much better position.
Everyone could have been in a much better position if they just built solar panels.
Yes.
But yeah. At least people are fighting for power. Like, they are trying to steal the geos, so that's good. Ooh, Icewind is going for Cold Fusion. That will help him a lot early, like, in the short term.
I think Cold Fusion is a great play, but I think I would also really want slant drilling before Cold Fusion, because that would get him a lot of water flowing in.
Yeah, so I already has a lot of water.
I mean, it's...
Okay,
I guess he has a huge stockpile, but once you start consuming that out of power, once you start putting down some reactors, that doesn't last all that long.
Maybe. Okay, Rip the Blip just upgraded. I hope he's making more. Power, is he going to do that? Yeah, he's going for wind turbines. He's going to separate those. Okay, I'm fine with that, but normally don't. Okay, I'm fine with it now.
Again, he could have put these next to his base very easily. They would have been only slightly weaker. He could have put down solar panels, although not so much with the dust storm. The saving grace is that he still has 4 return claims left. He can recover 2 of those wind turbines pretty easily and not suffer long term from it, but yeah.
Okay. I must say that if that Scott didn't buy into Icewind now, he could have be leading by a lot more now.
Right. He could possibly have even started an off-world. He could have gotten, I don't know, superconductor for his geotherm, plus geothermal borehole, and yeah, I might be a little too into those patents. Anyway, so there, 48k claim auction is quite a lot of money.
You don't want to do that if there are still claims on the market, like market for 10k, well, no, 14k, but that's not worth it.
Right. And even if there weren't, it's rare that you can get too much done with 48k claims. I mean, you have to be very careful with that. You have to have a very solid plan for it. You have to have an immediate market that's going to pay off very nicely. In this case, power is high enough that as long as he's running some sort of surplus, he'll be fine. But also one other thing, before it gets too far in the past, this mutiny on the steel mill. Not something you generally want to do. Having a single production building with no adjacency, that you have to ship things to, that you have to ship things back from, is not really ever going to pay off very much at all.
You only want to do that against the scientific, and if you do it, you want to have at least 2.
Right. Holding one mutiny, getting a second mutiny, double mutinying, so you have some adjacency.
Rip Blip is really making nice power money for a while already. He used to make 2k, now it's still 1k, it's going down, but still something like 100k he just made, which is really nice for him.
Yep, that really propelled him back into solid contention this game, though he still needs to find some way to have a long-term income source. He really doesn't. I mean, the Pleasure Dome is solid, very solid, but I'm not sure it's enough to help push him through to any sort of buy. He needs an optimization center, an off-world, something along those lines to make sure he can keep making money once the power market dies, which it will shortly.
Yeah, he's buying into Kawaii now, but he's now going to really stall. He only has his Plushy Dome making him money, and that's not going to be enough to finish the buy anytime soon.
Right.
Kawaii is like designed to go into no frills, which is going to be a lot better because launches are like 45k.
Yeah, food launcher is going to be very solid for Kawaii. And if Blip doesn't make any sort of move to match that off-world to get his own long-term income source, he might end up losing this race despite his large current lead.
I think he is going to lose the race because Kawaii also has like Thinking Machine and there's only EMP and Mutiny on the black market.
Right,
so...
and he's an expansive.
Yep. The only thing I dislike from Kawaii is he's not upgrading anything on his optimization center. He doesn't even have an optimization center. Only Icewind does have an optimization center, which is a mistake to not have.
I mean, there are a bunch more things I don't love about Kawaii's territory. 3 Geos feels like a bit much, especially when you could have connected one up and had Superconductor instead. Taking that second Iron Mine would have been helpful at some points in the game, but at the end feels a bit wasteful. Although I guess you can always just transition the other Iron Mine when he needs it. I don't know. I get a little more worked up about remote claims than most people. Going to an optimization center now at the colony is going to work out very nicely for Kawaii.
That Scar has like 3 guns on all of his Geos, which I really dislike. I mean, I understand why you would do that because power was high, but I normally never put my gun on the Geo because...
Right, I think most of the time, very early game on your first Geo or something, putting a goon down can be very helpful, but later Geos, it's harder to defend that decision. Probably better just to have a defensive mutiny on hand, and definitely better to go for Superconductor than pick up all these extra Geos, which you don't really have the claims for. Although I guess maybe if you bought a lot of claims.
Icewind is going for virtual reality, but he doesn't have any Plushy Domes up, so it's kind of surprising.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate.
It's not something you really want to do. But he has he has 240k in the bank, so...
Yep. He's also going for financial instruments right now. It does not seem like a thing that's going to pay off this game. Most people have life support production down, everyone has a lot of Geos already committed, so power's not going to go crazy this game. And everyone has very little debt, so just not going to pay off. Although chems are really cheap, so I guess there's that.
Ripped Blip also has a lot of money, he's going for off-field now. I also want to see like optimization center to support that because prices are going to skyrocket when there are more off-worlds up because now everyone is going to buy off-worlds, build off-worlds.
Right.
Those prices will go up because of that.
I am kind of concerned about Kawaii right now. With this single farm next to his double reactor, double glass, not making much sense. He's still in this aluminum, which again also doesn't make much sense. 600 aluminum already, $1 aluminum. And he's had this extraneous tile for a long time. He's also going for a second off-world, which is going to be problematic when someone's already 60% of the way to buying you. And the last thing that bothers me is that he bought into that Scar instead of Rip Blip.
Yep. But he is upgrading food, he already has 2 upgrades on that, so that's good. He probably wants to buy more EMPs and attack Rip the Blip with that, just delay him as much as possible, because look at the silicon, look at how much silicon money Rip the Blip is making, it's just ridiculous now, it's like an outworld.
Yeah.
A little bit less, but still. A lot. He's deciding to buy into him now. Okay,
yeah, that's good. One good thing for Kauai is that a lot of Riplip's current money is tied into that off-world. That ended up costing about 90k. So it's going to be a much closer race than it seemed. In fact, Kauai even has a slight advantage in that. Except for, you know, not having access to the huge amount of silicon money.
The second off-world placement is a big mistake because he has Faker Machine. He should have done it next to his colonel, next to his base.
Absolutely. You do not get the bonus for Thick Machines unless it's directly adjacent to your top HQ. You know what would have been a really nice place for it? Right on top of the aluminum.
Yep. You don't need aluminum anymore.
Rip Blip going for a second off-world when silicon is $150 now after the spike to $200. That should more or less guarantee that he loses this race.
I would say I would be fine with that if no one else has silicon, but that's because like has 4.25 silicon. He's going to earn him a lot of money. Is he even stealing, I think? The silicon from his opponents, which is also nice.
I mean, I understand from the standpoint of being able to recover the silicon money, but I still think the off-world is too expensive and too slow when you're already probably running behind Kauai, and they're gonna out-earn you in the long term, so I'm not sure that's a play you want to make to stretch things longer. Although I guess he didn't have many good choices anyway, because he was already running a bit behind.
He's going to lose this race because Kauai is already has more money, his off-world's already sending.
Yep.
Those
Although I'm very interested to see what Icewind does at this point. Because Icewind has a lot of cash on hand, and he could potentially buy out one of these other players. He should buy into that Scar, so he can get his own stock back, but we'll see what happens. Is it that Scar that has stolen the off-world? No. It is... Who stole Icewind's off-world?
Not sure. Too bad you cannot see that.
Okay, so Kauai stole Icewind's off-world, someone else stole Kauai's off-world. I guess they traded.
Okay.
Wait, no. I don't know.
But the thing is, Icewind doesn't have any off-worlds at the moment, so he might not... He can probably not kill anyone, at least not Kauai, anytime soon. And when Kauai gets ripped to blip, he has like 4 off-worlds, which is going to be...
Kauai really going overboard on food here. You don't need to produce 10 a second when you have 1,200 stored up. You cannot sustain that production on, you know, your -5 water a second. You also don't want this single steel mill here.
A lot of one single tile buildings.
Yeah, in general, Kauai has been doing a good job of using adjacency, making a lot of the right resources. Sometimes overcommitting, but also just inexplicably having some single tile sometimes. They just... You can balance... Right, you can balance the problem of overproducing by, you know, having pairs and other stuff instead of the single building plus overproduction. But yeah.
Yeah, Kauai can already buy red split if he has. Cancel the launch. Oh,
has the red button now. There we go.
That will probably end the game.
Well, maybe. That Scar and Icewind are fairly knotted up. Icewind maybe has the advantage. Oh, where is that Scar's second off-world? Oh, the mutinied one. Okay.
But yeah, all the prizes are dead except Glass.
Glass chems off-worlds.
Whoever has the most off-worlds is going to win, and I think Kauai has that because of the sub.
Right. Sub is doing a fairly slow job of ramping up, but once those first 2 launches get off, that should just take a very nice jump. Right, Icewind just about has the red button on that Scar. Again, I think this is really showing how that Scar pushing into Icewind stock, sticking in it for so long, really slowed him down. He could have gotten these offworlds up much earlier, could have had a much bigger advantage going into this. Instead, not so much.
Nope. He delayed himself for no reason. Yeah. The moment Icewind buys into this car, Kawhi already has like 250k and already his 2 launches are almost done, like 12 seconds, 22, so yeah. I
Right.
don't.
Also,
But the stock price is higher from Icewind for the moment. Because of that.
right.
So who knows?
I mean, sub-wise, Kawhi already getting that 1,000 a second from Blip. Blip having the 2 offworlds to that Scar's 1 should be enough to bring things home. Especially since he's getting the advantage of the earlier buys onto the stock. And the thinking machines.
Okay. This game is almost open. I guess. There's an extra claim for everyone. Are you still watching?
I am. There's not all that much to say at this point. Kawhi really should not be sitting on this much food. The price isn't consistently going up at this point. You can just sell out a lot of that. And it should also be seen as a sign that you should maybe not be in quite as many farms.
Launch affirmative. What a payout.
Yep. Slow march to the finish. Last hack. Yeah, you do not want to be hacking resources that your opponent is also producing. Not ideal, it turns out. Especially if we're going to transition out of those resources.
Successful off-world shipment.
Let's take a quick look at some other stuff while we wait for things to wrap up. Kawhi making a ton of money off-world, no big surprise there. Was the earliest into off-worlds, had thinking machines, and did some work with mutinies, although he also got mutinied a bunch.
Optimization routines successful.
Optimizations, pretty healthy optimizations for both Kawhi and Icewind. A lot of stuff on water and food, which makes a lot of sense. Some chemicals, help sustain all that. Icewind really picking up far too many patents. A lot of them very questionable value. Water Engine in particular does very little when you already have teleportation.
Look at all the money.
Black market-wise, Icewind picked up 5 extra claims, and that's a large part of what helped him really keep things going, despite Icewind attacking him early.
Successful off-world shipment. Make room for the profits.
Yeah, having to focus all these EMPs on that Scar really prevented him from being more competitive with other players. Yeah, we should be seeing this buy get done anytime.